The horse should have been dead. That was what everyone said. The desert's sun had baked the earth for months. Temperatures soared past 100 degrees. Dust storms swept across the barren landscape like giant walls of sand. Nothing survived out there for long. Not cattle, not crops, and certainly not a starving horse. Yet somehow, a skeletal chestnut stallion was still standing. Barely. His ribs protruded sharply beneath his skin. His legs trembled from exhaustion. One eye was swollen. Old scars crossed his body like faded reminders of battles nobody knew about. And despite his condition, he refused to leave a particular patch of desert. No matter how weak he became, no matter how close he came to death, the horse guarded that empty stretch of land as if it contained the greatest secret in the world. 3 days later, a struggling rancher named Cole Turner would discover that horse. And nothing in his life would ever be the same again. If you enjoy emotional horse stories about hope, second chances, and life-changing discoveries, make sure to like and subscribe. Because this story begins in the most hopeless place imaginable and ends with a miracle nobody saw coming. Cole Turner wasn't the kind of man people noticed. At 43 years old, he'd spent most of his life working small ranch jobs across Arizona. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't famous. And lately he wasn't even successful. 5 years earlier, he'd lost his ranch during a devastating drought. Then came debt. Then came disappointment. Then came loneliness. By the time the story begins, Cole lived alone in a small trailer on the edge of Dry Creek. Most people considered him unlucky. Some considered him foolish. Especially after the decision he made that spring. A county auction had listed several abandoned properties. Most buyers competed for farmland, river access, and profitable acreage. Cole bought something else. 20 acres of desert. For $20. The crowd laughed when the auction ended. One man nearly spilled his coffee. You paid $20 for a pile of dirt? Another shook his head. Even rattlesnakes don't want that land. Laughter filled the room. Cole simply smiled. Because while everyone else saw worthless desert, he saw possibility. Not profit. Not wealth. Possibility. The land sat 40 miles outside town. Remote. Silent. Forgotten. No buildings. No fences. No water source anyone knew about. Just endless sand, scattered rocks, and distant mountains. Even Cole wasn't entirely sure why he'd bought it. Something about the place felt different. Almost familiar. Like a dream he'd forgotten long ago. 3 days after the auction, he drove out to inspect his new property. The old pickup rattled across rough terrain. Dust swirled behind him. The deeper he traveled into the desert, the quieter the world became. No traffic. No houses. No people. Only wind. Eventually he reached the property marker. The land looked exactly as everyone described. Empty. Harsh. Unforgiving. Cole stepped from the truck and laughed. Well, partner. He looked around. I guess we're homeowners. The joke sounded ridiculous. Yet standing there somehow felt right. For the first time in years, he owned something again. No matter how small. No matter how worthless others considered it. As he explored, something unusual caught his attention. Tracks. Horse tracks. Fresh ones. Cole frowned. That made no sense. There were no ranches nearby. No grazing land. No water. Yet hoofprints crossed the sand. Dozens of them. The tracks seemed to circle one particular area repeatedly. Again. And again. And again. Almost like a horse was patrolling the same location. Curiosity pulled him forward. He followed the trail. The afternoon heat intensified. Sweat soaked his shirt. Then he saw it. A horse. Standing alone atop a rocky rise. The stallion looked like a ghost. Thin. Broken. Yet proud. The horse immediately spotted him. Their eyes met. For several seconds neither moved. The stallion's posture changed. Protective. Defensive. Almost territorial. Then something strange happened. Instead of running away, the horse remained exactly where he stood. Watching. Waiting. Guarding. Cole slowly approached. The horse pinned his ears back. A warning. Stay away. Cole stopped. Years around horses taught him patience. The stallion wasn't aggressive. He was scared. And exhausted. The closer Cole looked, the worse the situation appeared. The horse needed help. Immediately. Yet every survival instinct told the stallion not to trust people. Cole sighed softly. You've had a rough life, haven't you? The horse stared silently. Wind moved through his tangled mane. For some reason, Cole felt connected to him instantly. Maybe because both of them looked a little defeated. Maybe because both had been abandoned. Or maybe because destiny had been quietly guiding them toward this moment all along. The rancher returned to his truck. Minutes later he came back carrying water. The horse tensed immediately. Cole placed the bucket down. Then backed away. The stallion watched cautiously. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Finally, thirst won. The horse stepped forward. Slowly. Painfully. He lowered his head and drank. Cole smiled. Good choice. The stallion drank for nearly 5 straight minutes. When he finished, something remarkable happened. For the briefest moment, he looked at Cole differently. Not with trust. Not yet. But with curiosity. And sometimes curiosity is where trust begins. Over the following week, Cole returned every day. Food, water, patience. The same routine. The stallion never approached willingly. Never accepted touch. Never relaxed completely. Yet he stopped running. Which felt like progress. Cole eventually named him Dusty. Because the horse seemed made of desert itself. Tough, resilient, enduring. Meanwhile, rumors spread through Dry Creek. People learned about the dying horse. And about Cole's strange new obsession. Most thought he'd lost his mind. Then an elderly historian named Ruth Walker visited him. And everything changed. Because the moment she saw the horse, she nearly dropped her cane. Her eyes widened with shock. And the first words from her mouth made Cole's blood run cold. That's impossible. Cole frowned. What is? The old woman pointed directly at Dusty. Tears forming in her eyes. That horse shouldn't exist. The desert suddenly felt very quiet. Because according to Ruth Walker, the starving stallion standing on Cole's worthless $20 property wasn't an ordinary horse. He was the last living clue to a mystery that had remained unsolved for nearly 40 years. And hidden somewhere beneath that useless desert land was a secret powerful enough to change everything. The desert wind suddenly felt colder. Cole looked from Ruth Walker to the horse. Then back again. Dusty stood near the rocky ridge, quietly watching them. The stallion looked exactly the same as he had moments earlier. Thin. Scarred. Exhausted. Yet now Ruth stared at him as if she'd seen a ghost. What do you mean he shouldn't exist? Ruth slowly lowered herself onto a nearby rock. Her hands trembled. For several seconds, she simply stared at the horse. Then she spoke. 40 years ago, there was another horse. Cole listened carefully. The elderly historian pointed toward Dusty. He looked almost exactly like him. The rancher's curiosity deepened. Ruth continued. Back in the 1980s, a legendary ranch owner named Samuel Vance controlled much of the desert region surrounding Dry Creek. Unlike wealthy landowners who cared only about profit, Samuel was obsessed with horses. Especially one bloodline. A rare family of desert stallions known for extraordinary intelligence, endurance, and loyalty. People called them the Sunrunner horses. Stories about them spread across Arizona. Some considered them myths. Others swore they were real. According to local legends, the horses possessed an almost supernatural ability to find water in impossible places. More importantly, they always returned home. No matter how far they traveled. No matter how difficult the journey. Samuel's favorite horse was a magnificent stallion named Comet. The horse became famous throughout the state. Photographs appeared in newspapers. Tourists traveled just to see him. Then one day, both Samuel and Comet disappeared. Without warning. Without explanation. The mystery became one of the region's greatest unsolved stories. Search parties found nothing. No body. No horse. No clues. Eventually people assumed they had perished somewhere in the desert. Time passed. The story faded. The legend became folklore. Until now. Ruth pointed toward Dusty. The markings. Cole frowned. What markings? The historian carefully approached the horse. Dusty watched cautiously. But surprisingly, he didn't retreat. Ruth pointed toward a small white star-shaped marking hidden beneath dirt and tangled hair on the stallion's forehead. Cole hadn't noticed it before. The shape looked unique. Almost identical to a shooting star. Tears filled Ruth's eyes. Every Sunrunner horse carried that marking. Silence settled over the desert. Cole looked at Dusty. Then toward the endless horizon. The idea sounded impossible. Yet the old woman's certainty was undeniable. You think he's related? Ruth nodded. I'd bet my life on it. The possibility changed everything. Because if Dusty descended from the legendary Sunrunner bloodline, his presence on this land wasn't random. And neither was his behavior. Especially his refusal to leave. 4 days, that mystery consumed Cole's thoughts. The horse guarded the same rocky area constantly. Every morning, every evening, every night, Dusty circled the location like a watchman protecting something valuable. The behavior made no sense. Until 3 days later. That morning, Cole arrived with fresh water. Something felt wrong immediately. The stallion wasn't standing near the ridge, wasn't watching the horizon, wasn't waiting for him. Instead, Dusty lay motionless beneath a rocky overhang. Cole's heart nearly stopped. The horse looked worse than ever, breathing heavily, struggling to stand. Weakness had finally caught up to him. The rancher rushed forward. "Easy, buddy." Dusty's eyes opened slightly. The horse recognized him, but barely. Cole immediately called a veterinarian. An hour later, Dr. Emily Ross arrived. The moment she examined the horse, concern spread across her face. "He's severely dehydrated." Cole nodded. "I figured." The veterinarian continued. "Malnutrition, infection, exhaustion." She looked up. "I'm honestly amazed he's still alive." The statement hit hard, because Cole already knew it was true. Dusty should have died weeks ago, maybe months ago. Yet somehow he kept surviving. As Emily treated him, she noticed something unusual. A leather strap hidden beneath the horse's tangled mane. The veterinarian carefully removed it. Everyone stared. Attached to the strap hung a small metal tag. Corroded. Nearly unreadable. Emily cleaned the surface, then gasped. "What is it?" She turned the tag toward them. Engraved on the metal were 2 words. Vance Ranch. Ruth covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Cole felt chills run down his spine. The tag confirmed everything. Dusty wasn't just related to the legendary horses. He came directly from Samuel Vance's line. The mystery was real. And suddenly the horse became far more important than anyone imagined. Word spread quickly. Soon people from town began visiting. Reporters arrived. Horse enthusiasts appeared. Even local ranchers drove out to see Dusty. Most came out of curiosity. Others came because they believed old legends. Unfortunately, not everyone arrived with good intentions. One visitor in particular stood out. His name was Victor Hale, a wealthy land developer. Sharp suit, expensive truck, perfect smile. The kind of man who always seemed to know more than he admitted. Victor approached Cole one afternoon. His eyes never left Dusty. "Beautiful horse." Cole nodded cautiously. "He is." Victor smiled. "I'd like to buy him." For a long moment, Cole couldn't move. The moonlight reflected off the rusted metal box buried beneath the desert sand. Dusty stood beside him, silent, exhausted, yet somehow satisfied. As if the horse had finally completed a mission decades in the making. The stallion lowered his head, then gently nudged Cole's shoulder. The gesture felt almost intentional, almost urgent. "Open it." Cole swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he cleared away the remaining sand. The box was larger than he first realized. Heavy, ancient, and locked. Dusty watched every movement. The horse's dark eyes never left the container. Not for a second. Back at the trailer, Cole carefully loaded the box into his truck. The entire drive home, his mind raced. Questions flooded his thoughts. Who buried it? Why hide it here? And perhaps most importantly, how did Dusty know where it was? By sunrise, Ruth Walker and Dr. Emily Ross had joined him. Neither could contain their excitement. The old box sat on a workbench, covered in dust, covered in mystery. Ruth carefully examined the surface, then suddenly gasped. "There." Cole leaned closer. Faded initials appeared beneath layers of rust. SV. Samuel Vance. The legendary rancher. The man who vanished 40 years earlier. The room fell silent. Because if Samuel buried this box himself, everything was about to change. Using a small cutting tool, Cole finally broke the ancient lock. The lid creaked open. Everyone held their breath. Inside sat dozens of papers. Photographs. Letters. Documents wrapped in oilcloth. Remarkably preserved despite decades underground. But one item immediately stood out. A leather journal. Samuel Vance's journal. Ruth carefully lifted it. Tears instantly filled her eyes. "This is incredible." Cole opened the first page. The handwriting looked strong, confident. The entries began 42 years earlier. At first they described ordinary ranch life. Horse breeding, weather conditions, business dealings. But as the pages continued, a strange pattern emerged. Samuel became obsessed with something. A discovery. Something hidden beneath the desert. One entry read, "Everyone says this land is worthless. They couldn't be more wrong." Another entry said, "Comet found it first." Cole immediately looked at Dusty. The connection felt impossible, yet undeniable. Generations earlier, Comet had discovered something. Now Dusty had led them back to it. The journal continued. Each page became more mysterious, more urgent. Then they reached the final entries. And everything changed. Samuel wrote about finding an underground spring, a massive water source hidden beneath the desert, large enough to transform the entire region, large enough to turn barren land into thriving ranchland. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part came next. Samuel had discovered that powerful businessmen wanted control of it, men willing to steal, but even threaten violence. Rather than surrender the land, Samuel hid the evidence. Survey reports, legal documents, everything. Then he disappeared. The final page ended abruptly, almost as if he never got the chance to finish. The room felt heavy. Emily looked stunned. "You're telling me there's a giant underground water source under your property?" Cole stared at the maps. According to Samuel's notes, and if the information was correct, the $20 desert property wasn't worthless at all. It could become one of the most valuable pieces of land in the entire county. Before anyone could fully process the revelation, a truck pulled into the driveway. Victor Hale, the wealthy developer. Cole immediately felt uneasy. The timing seemed impossible. Too perfect. Victor stepped out smiling. But this time his friendliness felt forced. Artificial. Predatory. His eyes moved directly toward the workbench. Toward the open journal. Toward the documents. And Cole knew. Victor already suspected something. "I hear you've made an interesting discovery." Cole folded his arms. "Maybe." Victor's smile widened. "I'd like to make another offer." Ruth exchanged a worried glance with Emily. Neither trusted him. Neither did Cole. The developer removed a checkbook. "What if I offered $50,000 for the land?" The number hung in the air. $50,000. For land he purchased for $20,000. Most people would have accepted immediately. But Cole didn't. Because nobody offers $50,000 for worthless desert. Nobody. Victor saw the hesitation. Quickly he continued. $100,000. The room fell silent. Emily nearly dropped her coffee. Ruth looked alarmed. The amount had doubled instantly. Victor wasn't negotiating. He was desperate. And desperation revealed everything. Cole slowly smiled. "No." For the first time, Victor's mask cracked. Only slightly. But enough. "What do you mean no?" Cole looked directly into his eyes. "I think you already know what's out there." The developer's expression hardened. Dangerously. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Victor sighed. His charm disappeared completely. "You have no idea what you're involved in." The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Before leaving, Victor glanced toward Dusty. The horse immediately pinned his ears back. A warning. The same reaction he'd shown from the beginning. And suddenly Cole realized something. Dusty didn't fear Victor. He recognized him. Or at least recognized something familiar. Something connected to the past. That realization became even more disturbing later that night. Because Ruth discovered a photograph hidden inside Samuel's journal. A photograph nobody had noticed before. The image showed Samuel Vance standing beside Comet. Several ranch workers stood nearby. And in the background, one face made Ruth gasp. Cole rushed over. "What?" The elderly historian pointed at the image. Her hands trembled. "That's him." Cole looked closer. The photograph was old. Faded. Yet the resemblance was obvious. The man standing behind Samuel looked almost identical to Victor Hale. Same eyes. Same jawline. Same expression. Only younger. Much younger. Ruth's voice shook. "That's Victor's father." The room became silent. Terrifyingly silent. Because suddenly everything made sense. The interest. The offers. The desperation. Victor's family had known about the secret for decades. And now they wanted it back. But the biggest revelation was still coming. Because hidden within Samuel's maps was one final location. A place marked only with a single word. Sanctuary. And according to the journal, the truth about Samuel's disappearance was waiting there. The word haunted Cole's thoughts. Sanctuary. It appeared alone on the map. No explanation. No coordinates beyond a rough marking deep within the mountains north of the desert. Just a single word. Yet Samuel Vance had circled it 3 separate times. Whatever sanctuary was, it mattered. A lot. The following morning, Cole spread the maps across his kitchen table. Ruth studied every detail. Emily stood nearby. Dusty rested outside beneath a shade structure. The horse looked stronger than he had weeks earlier. Regular food. Clean water. Medical treatment. All of it was helping. But despite his improving condition, Dusty remained fixated on the desert property. Almost as if he knew the story wasn't finished yet. Ruth traced a finger across the map. There. Cole leaned closer. A narrow canyon appeared near the northern mountains. The marking sat directly beside it. Emily frowned. What's there now? Ruth shook her head. Nothing. The historian looked thoughtful. At least that's what everyone believes. 2 hours later, they loaded supplies into Cole's truck. Food, water, camping gear, extra fuel. If sanctuary existed, they intended to find it. Meanwhile, across town, Victor Hale sat inside his office staring at an old photograph. The same photograph Ruth had discovered. His father stood beside Samuel Vance. Both smiling. Both unaware of the conflict that would eventually destroy their friendship. Victor's expression darkened. For years he'd heard stories. Whispers. Family secrets. Promises of hidden wealth buried somewhere beneath the desert. Now those secrets were slipping away. And he wasn't about to let that happen. He picked up his phone. It's time. The voice on the other end answered immediately. Victor smiled coldly. Follow them. Back in the mountains, Cole's truck climbed a winding dirt road. The landscape changed dramatically. Desert gave way to rocky cliffs. Cliffs gave way to pine forests. The air cooled. Clouds drifted overhead. Hours passed. Then suddenly Dusty became restless. The stallion traveled in a horse trailer behind the truck. Normally calm, he now stamped his hooves repeatedly. Snorting. Blurt. Cole noticed immediately. Something's bothering him. Emily looked back. The horse's behavior seemed different. Focused. Determined. Almost excited. As sunset approached, they finally reached the canyon marked on Samuel's map. Everyone climbed out. The scenery stole their breath. Towering stone walls stretched toward the sky. Ancient trees lined the valley floor. A narrow stream wound through the canyon. Beautiful. Peaceful. Hidden. Cole understood the name immediately. Sanctuary. This place felt untouched by time. Dusty stepped from the trailer. The moment his hooves touched the ground, he lifted his head. His ears pointed forward. Then he started walking. Purposefully. The stallion wasn't exploring. He was leading. Just as he had done at the buried lockbox. Cole exchanged a glance with Ruth. Neither said a word. They simply followed. For nearly half an hour, Dusty guided them deeper into the canyon. The stream widened. The trees thickened. Birdsong filled the air. Then they saw it. An old cabin. Hidden among towering pines. Cole stopped walking. The structure looked surprisingly familiar. Not because he'd seen it before. Because it resembled photographs inside Samuel's journal. The cabin remained standing despite decades of abandonment. Weathered. Silent. Waiting. Emily whispered softly. We found it. The group approached cautiously. Dust covered everything. Yet the place felt strangely preserved. Almost protected. Cole pushed open the front door. The hinges groaned. Sunlight spilled into the interior. Then everyone froze. Photographs covered the walls. Dozens of them. Samuel Vance. Comet. Ranch workers. Family gatherings. Horse races. Memories from another era. The cabin wasn't merely a hideout. It was a time capsule. And then Cole noticed something else. A rocking chair near the fireplace. Not unusual by itself. Except for one detail. The chair wasn't dusty. It looked recently used. The realization sent chills down his spine. Someone had been here. Recently. Very recently. Emily noticed it too. That's impossible. Before anyone could respond, a sound echoed outside. An engine. Then another. Cole rushed to the window. His stomach dropped. 3 black SUVs rolled into the clearing. Victor Hale. He had found them. The developer stepped from the lead vehicle. Several men followed. None looked friendly. Victor smiled. But there was no warmth in it. Only greed. Only determination. Cole stepped outside. What do you want? Victor glanced toward the cabin. Then toward Dusty. Finally toward the canyon itself. The same thing my father wanted. His honesty surprised everyone. No more pretending. No more lies. Ruth approached. Your father betrayed Samuel. Victor laughed. Betrayed him? His expression hardened. My father discovered the water first. The canyon fell silent. Victor continued. Samuel stole the opportunity. Cole shook his head. The journal says otherwise. Victor's eyes narrowed. The journal only tells Samuel's version. For several moments nobody spoke. Then Victor revealed something shocking. His father hadn't simply searched for the underground spring. He had partnered with Samuel. The two men planned to develop the region together. Then they fought. The partnership collapsed. And shortly afterward, Samuel vanished. The revelation stunned everyone. Because it transformed the mystery entirely. What really happened 40 years ago? Had Samuel hidden the spring from greed? Or protection? Had Victor's father been betrayed? Or was he the betrayer? The answers remained unclear. Until Dusty suddenly moved. The stallion trotted past everyone. Past the cabin. Toward the stream. His behavior changed instantly. Focused. Urgent. Cole followed. The others followed too. Dusty stopped beside a massive boulder near the water. Then he pawed the ground. Again. And again. Just as he had at the buried lockbox. The horse was trying to show them something. Victor noticed. His eyes widened. For the first time all day, genuine emotion appeared on his face. Fear. Because he knew exactly what the horse had found. And whatever waited beneath that boulder would finally reveal the truth about Samuel Vance's disappearance. A truth powerful enough to destroy one family's legacy forever. The offer came immediately. No small talk. No hesitation. Cole shook his head. Not for sale. Victor's smile remained. Everyone has a price. Cole's answer remained unchanged. No. For a moment, irritation flashed across Victor's face. Then disappeared. Replaced by charm. Think about it. He handed over a business card. Before leaving, Victor glanced toward the rocky ridge Dusty guarded. The look lasted only a second. Yet Cole noticed. And suddenly something felt wrong. Very wrong. That night, he couldn't sleep. Questions filled his mind. Why was Victor interested? Why had Dusty remained on this land? What had Samuel Vance discovered 40 years ago? Then around midnight, a sound woke him. Horse hooves. Cole grabbed a flashlight, stepped outside, and froze. Dusty wasn't resting. The weakened stallion had somehow left his shelter. Despite barely standing earlier, he now moved across the desert. Purposefully. Determined. The horse headed straight toward the rocky ridge. Cole followed. The moon illuminated the landscape in silver light. Dusty climbed the slope slowly. Painfully. Yet he refused to stop. When he reached the summit, the horse halted. Then looked directly at one spot among the rocks. For several moments nothing happened. Then Dusty began pawing the ground. Twice. Again. Cole's pulse quickened. The horse wasn't wandering. He was searching. Or trying to show him something. The rancher knelt beside the spot. Brushed away loose sand. Then suddenly his fingers struck metal. Clink. His heart jumped. Dusty stopped pawing. The horse simply stood beside him. Watching. Waiting. As if this was the moment he'd been fighting to survive for. Cole cleared more sand. A rusted object slowly emerged from beneath the desert floor. Not a rock. Not debris. A metal box. Hidden. Forgotten. The moonlight reflected off its surface. And in that instant, Cole realized the dying horse had never been protecting empty desert land. He had been guarding a secret buried beneath the sand for nearly 40 years. And whatever waited inside that box was important enough for generations of horses to remember. The entire canyon seemed to hold its breath. Dusty stood beside the massive boulder. The stallion pawed the earth repeatedly. Twice. Again. His powerful hoofs struck the ground with surprising determination. Cole hurried forward. Victor Hale followed close behind. So did Ruth and Emily. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Because deep down, everyone knew this moment would finally reveal the truth. The truth about Samuel Vance. The hidden spring. The disappearing rancher. And the dying horse who had somehow carried a 40-year-old secret across generations. Cole knelt beside the boulder. The soil looked disturbed. Not recently. Long ago. As if someone had intentionally hidden something there. Using a shovel from the truck, he began digging. The others joined him. Minutes passed. Sweat covered their faces. The sun dipped lower across the canyon. Plank. Metal. Everyone froze. Cole carefully cleared away more dirt. A rusted iron hatch emerged beneath the soil. Victor's face instantly turned pale. Ruth noticed. And suddenly she understood. You knew. Victor looked away. But his silence said everything. The hatch wasn't a surprise to him. His family had known about it all along. Cole pulled the heavy door open. Cold air rushed upward. A hidden chamber stretched beneath the canyon floor. Stone steps descended into darkness. Emily grabbed a flashlight. Cole followed. The others came behind. Dusty remained above. Watching. Waiting. Guarding. The underground room looked astonishingly preserved. Wooden shelves lined the walls. Old lanterns hung from beams. Boxes filled one corner. And in the center stood a large wooden desk. Time seemed frozen. As if Samuel had walked away only yesterday. Cole approached carefully. A leather folder rested on the desk. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside lay a final letter. Addressed simply, to whoever finds this. The room became silent. Cole began reading. If you are reading these words, then Comet, or one of his descendants, has led you here. Ruth immediately started crying. Emily covered her mouth. Even Victor looked shaken. Cole continued. I never intended to disappear. Everyone exchanged glances. The mystery deepened instantly. Samuel explained that he had discovered the underground spring years earlier. The water reserve was even larger than anyone imagined. Enough to transform the entire region. Enough to make several men extraordinarily wealthy. Among those men was Victor's father. At first, they planned to develop the land together. But things changed. Greed entered the picture. Investors became involved. Powerful businessmen demanded control. Soon they weren't discussing ranches anymore. They were discussing ownership. Monopolies. Fortunes. Samuel refused. He believed the water belonged to the community. Not corporations. Not investors. Not wealthy elites. The conflict escalated. Threats followed. Eventually Samuel realized his family was in danger. So he disappeared voluntarily. Not to escape responsibility. To protect those he loved. The final pages explained everything. He had hidden the spring. Hidden the evidence. Hidden himself. Then quietly lived his remaining years in a distant state under another name. A life of secrecy. A life of sacrifice. All to ensure nobody could exploit the land. The room felt heavy with emotion. But the greatest shock still remained. At the bottom of the folder rested official legal documents. Property deeds. Water rights. Trust agreements. Everything fully notarized. Everything legally binding. Samuel had transferred ownership decades earlier. Not to himself. Not to his heirs. To the people of Dry Creek. The entire community. The spring belonged to them. Always had. Tears rolled down Ruth's face. He did it. Cole stared at the documents. Samuel had protected the future of an entire region. And now, 40 years later, the truth had finally returned. Victor sank into a chair. Defeated. Completely defeated. My father spent his entire life searching for this. His voice sounded hollow. Broken. Cole looked at him. For the first time, Victor didn't seem like a villain. He seemed like a man trapped by someone else's obsession. A burden inherited rather than chosen. Victor lowered his eyes. We thought Samuel stole everything. Ruth gently shook her head. No. She pointed toward the letter. He gave everything away. The realization hit harder than any argument ever could. Above ground, the setting sun painted the canyon gold. The world felt different somehow. Lighter. Freer. As if a 40-year-old weight had finally lifted. Over the following months, the story exploded across the country. News stations covered it. Documentaries followed. Experts verified the spring. Hydrologists confirmed its enormous size. The discovery transformed Dry Creek forever. The community gained access to a sustainable water source. Local ranches flourished. Small farms returned. Businesses reopened. Families who had struggled through years of drought finally had hope again. And at the center of every headline stood one unlikely hero. The dying horse. The horse everyone assumed would never survive. Yet fate wasn't finished rewarding him. As the story spread, horse enthusiasts became fascinated by Dusty's bloodline. Genetic testing was performed. The results stunned everyone. Dusty wasn't merely descended from the legendary Sunrunner horses. He was the last known living representative of the bloodline. The very last. A living piece of history. Preservation groups stepped forward. Horse organizations offered support. Universities wanted to study the lineage. But Cole refused to treat Dusty like a trophy. To him, The horse remained exactly what he'd always been. A friend. A partner. A miracle. Months later, a ceremony took place in Dry Creek. Hundreds of people attended. Children. Families. Ranchers. Reporters. The entire town gathered beneath a clear blue sky. A new community ranch was unveiled, built using funds generated by the Spring Project. And at the entrance stood a bronze statue. Not of a businessman. Not of a politician. Not of a wealthy landowner. A horse. Frozen forever with his head held proudly high. The crowd erupted in applause. Cole stood nearby, emotion filling his eyes. Then something happened that nobody expected. The mayor stepped forward carrying a small wooden box. Inside sat a deed. The crowd fell silent. The mayor smiled. Cole Turner. Cole looked confused. The mayor continued. You bought 20 acres of desert for $20. Laughter spread through the crowd. The mayor smiled again. And because your kindness uncovered a miracle that saved this community. He handed over the document. We'd like to return the favor. Cole opened the deed. His jaw dropped. The community had gifted him ownership of a beautiful ranch bordering the newly protected Spring Reserve. Hundreds of acres. Healthy pasture. A home. A future. The reward wasn't charity. It was gratitude. The crowd cheered. Emily hugged him. Ruth cried openly. Even Victor stepped forward and shook his hand. The years of bitterness finally gone. That evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the mountains, Cole sat beside Dusty on a grassy hill overlooking the ranch. The transformation felt unbelievable. Just 1 year earlier, he'd been a struggling rancher with nothing. Dusty had been a dying horse abandoned in the desert. Now both had found a home. A purpose. A family. Cole rested a hand on the stallion's neck. You know something, buddy? Dusty gently nudged him. The rancher smiled. They called this land useless. The horse flicked an ear. Cole looked toward the endless fields glowing beneath the sunset. They were wrong. A warm breeze crossed the valley. The springs sparkled in the distance. Children laughed near the barns. Healthy horses grazed peacefully. Life flourished where people once saw only emptiness. And in that perfect moment, Cole finally understood the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes the world's most valuable treasures don't look valuable at first. Sometimes miracles arrive disguised as problems. Sometimes $20 can buy a dream. And sometimes a dying horse can lead a broken man to a brand new life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances, hidden blessings, and the incredible bond between humans and horses. Because sometimes the greatest gift in life isn't what you find, it's who leads you there.